In Inception, people are talking about the Bram sound, the low brass. I made the sound, but that means nothing. Chris wrote the sound in his screenplay to Inception. It was his way of showing time slowing down. We booked a studio for the next day with 10 brass players, and we had a piano in the middle of the room with a brick on the sustain pedal. So the brass would play into this piano and all the strings would be vibrating. And that's the sound of Inception.
What's good, y'all? This is ASOL, and I'm just going to be starting with the video today talking about one of my favorite movie soundtracks, Inception. A little bit about Inception. It came out in 2010, July 13th of 2010, and was directed by Christopher Nolan, which notably made movies such as Interstellar, The Dark Knight Rises. So any of y'all that like the little Christian Bale Batmans, he directed those. And also one of the newest films he made was Tenet, also one of my favorites, but we'll get to that another video. Well, notably with this film, Inception, the soundtrack was composed by Hans Zimmer, who's done a lot of famous films as well, such as The Lion King. No one really talks about that, but that's one of my favorite composers, not gonna lie to you. So without further ado, I do want to talk about first my favorite soundtrack, which was Time, which is one of Hans Zimmer's famous tracks of all time. After the Inception movie came out, it's very inspirational. The melody itself, it was like very melancholy, and it's towards the end of the movie, the very last scene, which I'll go ahead and display now, and then kind of do a breakdown exactly how it sounds with the scene.
We'll be landing in Los Angeles in about 20 minutes. Do you need immigration forms?
Thank you.
Hotel set.
Oh, no.
Do you need immigration forms?
Welcome home, Mr. Cobb. Thank you, sir.
So, with that particular scene and that soundtrack with Time, it just gives an overall triumphant feel because throughout the movie, you pretty much just going through a heist, but instead of like in the real world, it's in your mind. So, at the very end, it's extremely emotional with Time because the main character, Cobb, spoilers if anyone hasn't seen it, he pretty much spins that thimble to see if he's still in the dream or not, which is why towards the end of the soundtrack for Time, it sounds kind of pensive or kind of like melancholy in a way. So it's almost a bittersweet moment. So there's no telling if it's actually real or not. So it kind of plays a trick on you. And Christopher Nolan's pretty big on kind of keeping your mind open towards the end of movies, especially ones such as Interstellar, Inception, Tenet. So, and honestly, Time is basically just an all-time favorite, mainly because Hans Zimmer put so much thought into it. It's very emotional. I mean, there's even a music video that he conducted with the movie for this soundtrack, and also a remix with Alan Walker. That's also out, that just came out just this past year for the remix. But he also had a music video where he had a couple of strangers kind of describe their most emotional moments, and then they listened to the track, and it was very heartfelt. And I love the way he uses horns, because Hans Zimmer, if you've listened to anything by Hans Zimmer, he's very big on horns and like really warm sounding horns. So it kind of brings it in to be more dramatic for the scene, which probably has to do with it being live instruments, because of course you can always hear a difference with that. But that's definitely one of my favorites. But overall, for the movie itself and the soundtrack, from beginning to end, even though it's only 12 soundtracks, typically it's like about 12 to 20 tracks within a movie. But with Inception, it's only 12. And a bit of a repetitiveness, because of course it's got to go with the theme, because it's a movie. It's not like, some kind of side project, so it's gonna have some kind of cohesiveness to it. But Time is pretty much like the theme of the movie, so that's why it's pretty prominent throughout the soundtrack as well. Like with Half Remembered Dream, I know just about all the soundtracks except for like a few are in like G major or minor, a lot of G's and A's, so it stays on course. And Time itself is in G major, so a lot of times whenever he's incorporating the theme into the songs, you can hear it. And then my second favorite is Dream is Collapsing, where it's in the very beginning of the movie. You're kind of getting an idea exactly of what the main character does when he's in people's minds and trying to get information. And he was trying to hurry up and get some information, but he had to wake up, but the people on the outside in the real world were trying to wake him up and they couldn't. So they had to do what was called a kick. So he's in a chair and they push him back into a tub. And actually, that same concept was used in Lil Wayne's music video for 6 Foot, 7 Foot, to kind of like get him up, because it's like he's not dreaming, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that until like one day I was just happened to watch it, and I love Inception, so of course I recognized it right away. But with Dream is Collapsing, it's about the same, but it's very fast paced, and he uses a lot of strings in Dream is Collapsing to kind of give it that pensive, like he has to hurry up, he has to move, otherwise he's just going to be stuck there. And similar with Dream is Collapsing is Paradox in Dream Within a Dream, where they're pretty much just trying to race against time, because time in dreams in the movie pretty much goes slower than in real life. But overall, just how Hans Zimmer handled the movie itself set a whole movement, because a lot of the movies he scored for is similar, but when Inception came out, it became an iconic thing, especially with the horn blares. I remember seeing the trailers for this movie, and a lot of the time it had to deal with a horn, like a blaring horn, like Wah! And then of course there was memes that came out because of it. So it's more than just my favorite movie, it's actually an iconic movie now. So I kind of mess with it heavy. And honestly, just Hans Zimmer as a composer overall, very talented. and he keeps on amazing me with a lot of his work. I honestly look up to his work, and I sometimes play Time on the piano just because, like, it's that good. Or I study the soundtracks that he does all the time. And I honestly intend to study another one of the movies that he's done, Interstellar, which probably just had to be for another video for another time. But this was me talking about the Inception soundtrack, and I hope you guys like and subscribe and follow for more.